And my son's baby shower, they tied an apron around my waist that said, "Dishwasher in Chief." Everyone laughed. I smiled, like a prop in someone else's joke. They filmed me wiping tables, cutting cake, and posted it with the caption, "Training Wheels for Assisted Living." That night, a letter arrived from the DMV. Title transfer complete, 2016 Toyota Corolla. But I don't own a Corolla. Then the pharmacy called. "Ma'am, your prescriptions are being sent to Maple Grove Memory Care?" Memory Care? My daughter-in-law had signed my name, and the notary? She'd been at that same baby shower. I drove straight to the bank. The manager turned the screen toward me, and there it was, a durable power of attorney with my forged signature. They were moving my money, my house, my life, right out from under me. So I opened a folder. Every receipt, text, date, signature, I collected them all. And when the judge finally saw the video from that shower and read their caption out loud, she looked at them and said 3 words that changed everything. Boundary recognized. I'm Eleanor Hart, but most folks in Cedar Ridge, Ohio call me Ellie. I'm 64, a retired postal clerk who still sorts her junk drawer by zip code out of habit. I live in a small ranch with an eager maple in the front yard that drops leaves like a child drops promises. On Sundays, if I'm not at church, you'll find me at the Sunrise Diner on Route 42, drinking coffee that tastes like yesterday's plans, and listening to the waitresses call each other honey in the same breath they correct the specials. This is the place where the owner never runs out of ketchup, but always runs out of optimism by 2. I used to think I was good at swallowing heat. I could absorb embarrassment like a sponge. The missed birthdays that my son forgot to call for. The family dinners where I showed up with a casserole and got, "We already ate." The jokes about my old Buick and my outdated shoes and how I say pocketbook instead of purse. But a sponge gets heavy, even if it doesn't look like much. One Sunday in April, the sponge finally dripped onto the table. It was a baby shower, which should have been sweet. Balloons the color of a grocery store sky, cupcakes with buttercream that clung to everything it touched, a banner that said, "Oh boy," in glitter letters, big enough to shame a billboard. It was at my son's house, Jason and Brooke, 2 people I used to believe were my home, even when they were the ones I had to knock for. Brooke put me in an apron. She tied it tight enough to make breathing a decision. She said it was a joke, a cute one, the kind you post so your friends write "dead" and "I can't," and sprinkle skull emojis like confetti. The apron said, "Dishwasher in Chief." Everyone laughed as if laughter was the right price for participation. I tried to pretend I was in on it. I wiped the counter. I took plates. I smiled with my mouth closed so I wouldn't taste the frosting. When the cake came, they handed me a knife, but someone else put their hand over mine and guided it, like I was a child using safety scissors. "Smile, Ellie. Everyone loves a helpful grandma." The phone camera shimmered, the boomerang looped, and the caption went up somewhere online that I don't belong to. Training Wheels for Assisted Living. You can tell yourself you're not humiliated if you look at the floor and count shoes. Red flats, tan wedges, gray sneakers with baby spit on the laces, a pair of loafers pretending to be casual. But I heard the giggle before I felt the sting. My son hid his smirk behind a Solo cup, which is hard because plastic doesn't cover what the eyes do. I kept clearing plates, because my hands know how to work when my heart wants to leave. Here's what love does to a person who can't stop proving it. It throws lists at thin air. The crib I bought when the first one fell through. The insurance bill I paid because the envelope had too many red notices to ignore. The nights I stayed while they grabbed a drink, and the hours rolled past midnight and then past 1. I told myself I was lucky to be needed. Lucky is a word that doesn't stick, but I wore it like a sticker anyway. 2 weeks after that shower, the mail brought me a letter from the DMV. It said, "Title transfer complete, 2016 Toyota Corolla, registered to Eleanor May Hart." I don't drive a Corolla. I drive an '04 Buick that smells like coffee if you breathe deep enough. I called the number on the letter, and a machine told me to press 2 if I wanted to learn the definition of title transfer. I wanted to press a key that said undo. I put on my coat and drove to the bank. The branch manager was a woman with a symmetrical haircut and a calm that felt like a prescription. She turned her computer monitor so I could see the blue and white screen that might as well have been the sky. She said, "Miss Hart, your agent has certain rights under your durable power of attorney." I asked what she meant. She pointed to a PDF with my name and address and a signature that looked awkward, as if someone had learned me from a birthday card. The notary stamp had a name I knew, Kyra Malone. She was at the shower. She wore a sash that said, "It's a boy," as if it were a title granted by a kingdom. I left the bank with my hand shaking so badly I couldn't get my car key into the ignition without missing twice. Half an hour later, my pharmacy called to say they'd canceled my refills because my daughter-in-law had notified me I was transferring to Maple Grove Memory Care next week. "They'll handle your meds there," the text said, as if there were the place where old pencils go when they can't sharpen anymore. I put my phone face down on the counter and stood very still. I felt my heartbeat in my wrists. I examined the kitchen like it was a photograph I didn't remember taking. The magnet that says, "I run on coffee and prayers." The crooked sunflower calendar with last month's square still in view. The window with a smear that catches the afternoon light like a mistake someone forgot to fix. I waited for tears or rage or something that would crack the silence like a dish. What arrived was a folder. I pulled everything I owned that had ink. Tax returns, the tiny life insurance payout for my husband, Tom, who died without a will and left me with a grubby check and the thin feeling of a person who starts opening the mail standing up. The Venmo screenshots where I transferred 50 here, 100 there, 300 when the landlord is a jerk and we're 2 days late. Screen grabs of apologetic texts without dates. The sympathy card Brooke signed from my neighbor's funeral. A sweet loop in her Y and the same angle on her capital K that nodded at the notary entry. I took pictures and labeled them with a strip of masking tape and a Sharpie, the way I'd label holiday presents when there were enough hands to receive them. Then I drove to the county building, a rectangle of beige and glass that smells like paper layered on paper. Probate court is for the living, which is the irony of it. The clerk sent me down a hall to legal aid, a door with a brass plate that said consultation, and beyond it, a woman with a soft voice and a sturdy way of looking at you. "I'm Maya Chin. Tell me everything." I told her, and I didn't mention the shower because I wanted this to be about facts, but the cake still rose like a bubble in my throat. She listened like there were no clocks. When I finished, she folded her hands and asked me one question. "Ellie, are you ready to set a boundary you won't walk back?" "Yes," I said. It surprised me how steady it sounded. Maya filed a petition to revoke the power of attorney on grounds of fraud. She requested an emergency injunction so my son and daughter-in-law couldn't move me, open credit, or touch my accounts. She subpoenaed bank footage from the day the documents were notarized and the notary's journal. She asked for phone records showing where I was on the date of the signature. On that particular Tuesday, I was at the Sunrise Diner from 6 to 2, filling in for Carla, whose mother had chemo. At the end of the shift, the girls made me sign a thank you card, my name and the date with a doodled heart that I don't remember making. Maya added to the folder like a piece of a puzzle that only fits the picture you never thought you'd have. When I confronted Jason in his driveway, he used a voice I knew from when he got in trouble as a teenager and tried to climb out by spinning words like they were blankets. "Mom, we're protecting you. You've been forgetful." "I forget your wife's middle name because I never had to use it to love you." Brooke folded her arms across a sweatshirt that said Stanton and Hart Interiors, which is the online decor shop I helped start with a chunk of Tom's payout. My name never made it onto the LLC. Paperwork is messy, Ellie, she told me, the way you talk to a child about the rain. Maple Grove has a piano. You'll make friends. I tried to sign me away, and it wasn't a shout, which made it louder. 2 nights later, a rock shattered my Buick's headlight. There was a taped note on my door that said, "You're confused. Let us help." I called the sheriff and let a deputy in a jacket walk my cul-de-sac with a flashlight. He wrote down license plates. He asked if I had a porch camera. I did. He pulled a still frame of a figure in a Stanton and Hart hoodie. He said they'd patrol extra. He told me to call if anything else happened. He looked at me the way kind people do when they're angry for you and can't show it.
When the court date came, probate court smelled like dust and toner and impatience. Judge Alvarez had the kind of voice that could cut glass without chipping it. Maya presented the bank video, Brooke sliding papers across a desk to Kyra the notary, no Ellie. Then pharmacy call logs, the DMV letter, my diner time card with the greasy ink of a day well worked. And finally, the screenshot of the shower boomerang. Me, scraping plates. The caption, "Training wheels for assisted living," read aloud by a clerk who didn't look at me, because kindness sometimes means letting your eyes live somewhere else. Brooke tried tears that didn't carry water. "She's slipping," she said. "She left the stove on." "Once," I said. "I reheated chili and fell asleep on the couch. I woke to Jason eating it cold from the fridge, and the burner wasn't off then either." The judge set down the papers and looked at the 3 of us like we were different types of maps. "Miss Stanton Hart, your help looks a lot like control." She turned to Jason. "And you? This is your mother." She revoked the POA, effective immediately. She issued a protective order that said my son and his wife could not move me, manage my finances, or contact my medical providers. Then she asked me if I wanted restitution. I looked at my son, and for a moment he was 12 again, in a scuffed Little League uniform, asking for 5 more minutes at the park. "Your Honor, I want my life back, not their ruin." "Boundary recognized," she said, and banged the gavel like a door closing from the inside. When something awful lifts, it doesn't float. It thuds out of the room and leaves a dent where it used to sit. I walked out of the courthouse lighter, and also more aware of the weight that had trained my shoulders. I drove to the Sunrise Diner, because after court you need a grilled cheese made by hands that aren't yours. Carla poured me coffee without asking any questions, which is a kind of prayer. I took the first bite and felt my mouth remember what uncomplicated tastes like. Maya helped me freeze my credit with all 3 bureaus. She helped me set up a trust for my house so it wouldn't be a target of convenience. She added my sister Ruth as a trusted contact, so if anyone tries something slick, a phone would ring in Indiana, where love lives, on a quiet street with shutters that need paint and a woman who remembers how I like my tea. I changed my pharmacy password. I put my bills into autopay like grown-ups do when they've been told they can't be one. I placed the folder in my desk, then made a copy and put it in a safe deposit box with the only things that ever scared me enough to lock away: my marriage license, Tom's obituary, and my high school ring. Life didn't turn into a postcard. Bills still looked like warnings. The Buick still coughed in cold weather, but the phone stopped dinging for emergencies that were just someone else's Monday dressed like my obligation. I had time that didn't feel stolen. I used it like it belonged to me. On Fridays, I started baking for the Cedar Ridge Farmers Market, brown butter pecan bars and lemon chess pie in disposable tins. I wrote labels by hand in block letters because cursive doesn't belong to the world anymore. People bought one, then came back and asked for the same thing next week with a friend. By June, I found a second-hand concession trailer on a yard sale page, sun-faded, missing a hinge, with good bones and potential if you squinted. I painted it soft yellow and stenciled Heart's Pie on the side. The Rotary Club asked me to park at their pancake breakfast. The local morning news shoved a microphone under my chin and asked me for my secret. I said, cold butter and minding my own business. And someone laughed like I told a joke on purpose. Grief is a background hum, even when you turn off the machine. I still miss Tom when the mailbox hit a certain angle of shadow. I still looked at the empty passenger seat when a funny billboard went by. But the grief that clung to my son eased like a bruise when the color goes dull. I learned to look at Jason without trying to find the boy he used to be inside the man he chose to become. No one told me when the baby arrived. I found out on Instagram, which is a sentence I never thought I'd say out loud. A high school friend posted a story of blue balloons tied to a hospital chair, a bundle with dinosaurs on the swaddling blanket, a caption with a name that sounded like a baseball player from 1978. I stared at the tiny face and whispered hello to the ceiling, which is where I store wishes when I can't write them down. I asked God to make him kinder than the arms that held him.
Time did that trick where it walks at one speed while your heart walks at another. I sold pies and poured coffee and took cash and listened to people talk about weather and politics and back pain and what to bring to the potluck. I learned the names of kids who restock salt shakers at sunrise before school. I taught a girl named Anna how to flip bacon with a butter knife when the tongs go missing and hunger doesn't. On Wednesdays, I started volunteering at the library for adult literacy night. We sat at long tables under soft lights and said things like short vowel, long vowel, your brain is a muscle and look at it flex. A man my age wrote his name without shaking. A woman older than me read a street sign and cried into her sweater. We cheered and pretended our clapping was quiet. In late August, a man in a county polo knocked on my trailer when the market was slow. He told me the district attorney had filed a deferred prosecution agreement. If restitution was paid and certain conditions were met, classes, community service, no formal charges, he asked if I wanted to sign off. Maya called that night and let me know the choice was mine. I thought of the rock through my headlight and the note on my door. I thought of the thick twist of rage I'd swallowed at that shower and the way the judge's gavel sounded like a release. Then I thought of a baby who didn't ask to be born into a story already in progress. Let them do the work, I said, but don't put the money in my pocket. Put it where it feeds somebody besides me. The judge directed the restitution to Sunrise's Coffee for Seniors Fund and the library's adult literacy night. We put a wheelchair ramp at the diner so Mr. Harlan didn't have to wait for 2 busboys to lift him like a sofa. We bought softer chairs that didn't pinch hips. At the library, we stocked a shelf with spiral notebooks and pens that don't leak and little cards that say, "You can." I watched a woman pick up a pen and hold it like a newborn bird. In September, I cleaned out the junk drawer and found a sticky note under a roll of twine. It said, "Mom's signature, practice." My capital H stared back at me like a picture of my own face drawn by a stranger. I put it in a plastic sleeve and filed it with the folder. I didn't send it to the DA. I didn't need to. I already had the only paper that mattered, the kind that says, "I belong to myself." One evening, as the sun slid down like a coin in a slot, I saw Jason across the market parking lot near a landscaping truck. Mud on his boots that looked earned. He didn't come over. He stood with his hands in his pockets like a boy waiting for a bus he isn't sure he wants to catch. He lifted a hand and tapped his chest twice, our old signal for, "I'm okay." I nodded. It wasn't an apology. It was a beginning of a beginning, which is sometimes what kindness looks like when it's ashamed of itself. October came and brought a sharpness that makes apples and anger crisp. Business slowed because pie is seasonal optimism, and some months Ohio can't be bothered. I put an electric kettle in the trailer and sold hot chocolate with marshmallows that disappeared faster than the grief they were meant to sweeten. On a slow day, I wiped the counter 3 times and watched leaves hurtle across the lot like they were late for a meeting. A woman in scrubs bought 4 pecan bars and said, "I heard what happened. My mother-in-law is going through something similar. How did you know what to do?" "I didn't," I said. "I just stopped mistaking control for love. Then I got a folder." It's funny, the things that hold. The Sunrise Diner keeps a coffee can by the register labeled, "Pay It Forward." It's dented and honest and more accountable than some people I've known. People slip in 1s and 5s and write little notes from time to time that say, "For the man with the navy cap," or "For the lady who reads slow but smiles fast." On the first snow, a teenage boy put in a 20 and looked at me like he wasn't sure generosity counts if someone sees it. I saluted the can with my spatula. We made a ceremony of simple things. Thanksgiving was quiet except for the noise food makes when it wants to help. I roasted a chicken because a turkey is more pressure than a person should put on a bird. I took a piece of lemon chess to the church secretary because she keeps the prayer list like a general and makes it sound like kindness. At night, I watched the local parade and critiqued the floats like I had money in them. When a commercial from Maple Grove came on, smiling seniors playing cards under fluorescent cheer, I did not throw anything. I turned down the volume and breathed like a person who is not furniture. One Sunday after church, I found a postcard in my mailbox with a picture of a dinosaur on it. The handwriting was Jason's, in the careful style he used when he was embarrassed to be careful. It said, "His name is Avery. He likes trucks and hates socks. Happy Thanksgiving, Mom." No return address, just a blot where a zip code could have been. I put the postcard on my fridge with a magnet that says, "Make good choices." I stood there for a long time, the way you stand at the ocean and watch water argue with itself.
Winter does what winter always does in Ohio. She shows up uninvited and acts like she bought the place. The trailer closed for 2 months because my pies are not built for frostbite. I took extra shifts at the diner, which, if you're lonely, is a fair substitute for family. The girls bought me a tacky sweater with a pie slice on it that lights up if you press the cherry. I wore it until the battery died. We put up a small tree on the counter with ornaments that fell off if you looked at them wrong. People dropped off cookies, the store kind that taste like colored air, and we ate them like gratitude anyway. In January, the library started a new class for adults who had never used a computer. The first night, we taught a man how to click. He laughed like a child every time the arrow listened. A woman created her first email and sent a message to herself that said, "I can do hard things." She stared at the screen while the computer thought about sending and receiving something she built with her own 2 hands. I thought about paper and screens, and how courage is the same in both places, just dressed differently. By February, the restitution money had finished building the diner ramp and buying chairs and topping off the coffee can for a month. I heard from the county that the classes were done and the community service hours were met. The judge checked a box on a paper somewhere, and a thing that could have hardened did not. I slept better than I had in years, not because someone forgave us, but because someone chose repair over spectacle. One bright Saturday in March, an older man with a bookshop voice came by the trailer and asked if I'd consider placing pies at his store's coffee corner. His name was Mr. Manuel, widowed, funny in the way that doesn't need an audience. He told me about a customer who reads the last page first, and a little boy who hides comic books behind gardening manuals because he thinks superheroes are weeds that need shade. I brought 6 lemon chesses on Monday and stayed to alphabetize the G's because his shelves were brave but not obedient. We started walking in the park on Sundays after I turned off the trailer's lights, which is what you do when companionship knocks softly.
He brought me a bunch of wildflowers once, all stem and stubborn color, and I put them in a jar that used to hold pickles and decided dignity doesn't need crystal. I saw Brooke twice in that year. Once in the cereal aisle, where she pretended not to see me by choosing to study the back of a box like it held state secrets. Once at the post office, where I was buying forever stamps with songbirds, and she was sending a package that rattled. We did not speak. I composed several speeches on my drive home and delivered them to my toaster. They sounded wise in the kitchen. In the world, they would have been wasted. Silence sometimes is the hard work that words can't finish. On an ordinary Tuesday, my sister Ruth called from Indiana to ask what kind of mulch I liked. We talked about nothing and then everything, which is how sisters do. She told me she was proud of me in a way that made me feel like a 10-year-old who finally rode her bike without hands. After we hung up, I opened my folder and touched each page. I said thank you to inanimate objects because it felt proper. Then I closed the drawer and went to make pastry dough, which asks for cold butter and faith. Spring returned with the soft drama of a new show. The market opened and the trailer lined up with food trucks that did tacos and barbecue and one thing called vegan joy that tasted like hope dipped in sesame seeds. The Rotary invited me back for their breakfast. I made pies and listened to people talk about the Reds and the weather and their mothers. The police chief bought a pecan bar and said, "How's business?" And I said, "Better than last year." And we both knew that sentence did more work than the pecans did. One mild day, Jason's truck slowed by my curb. He did not stop. He looked at the house like a person looks at a childhood photograph and realizes the wallpaper was always ugly. I was on the porch with the mug that said, "World's Okayest Baker," which is a title I accept. He lifted his hand to his chest and tapped twice again. I matched him from the porch with a small motion, because some language does not need revising. He drove on. If you want a moral, here is mine, and it is not stitched on a pillow. Love without boundaries is not love. It is a leash. I wore that leash for years because it felt like company. The day I learned to unclip it, I did not run away. I walked back to myself at a pace that matched my breath. It turns out I am good company when I'm not busy proving I deserve to be invited. I have a life now that fits in ordinary sentences. I bake pies. I work at a diner where coffee is a currency and gossip is a spice. I help grown adults learn to read and send emails that say, "I did it." I keep a folder that names me and protects me, and I keep my keys where I can reach them without asking permission. Sometimes I imagine the boy with the dinosaur blanket playing with a truck on a carpet that needs vacuuming. I picture him hating socks and laughing at farts because some humor never ages. I picture someone reading to him at bedtime. I do not choose who it is in my mind because the story isn't mine to design anymore. I ask the ceiling to make him kind. I ask the floor to hold him up. I ask the middle space we breathe to teach him the difference between control and care. If he ever comes to my trailer, I will hand him a slice of lemon chess and say, "Cold butter, buddy, that's the trick." On the day the Chamber of Commerce called to say they'd chosen Heart's Pie as Small Business of the Month, I stood in the kitchen with my hand on the counter and said nothing for a whole minute. Then I laughed into my elbow because there was no one to hear me except the kettle. I hung the plaque on the trailer wall because validation feels like a good coat on a cold day, even if you don't need it to walk out the door. I am not a hero. I am a woman who can make crust without measuring and knows the value of a signature. I am a person who believed love meant never saying no and then learned the 2-letter word that made space for yes. I do not want revenge because revenge is an acid that eats its own container. I wanted my life and I got it. Retired postal clerk, pie maker,
boundary setter, library volunteer, woman with her own keys. There is a church bulletin on my fridge with a verse about justice rolling down like waters. I think justice sometimes looks like a gavel in a fluorescent room. Sometimes it looks like a ramp on a diner and a library shelf stocked with cheap notebooks. Sometimes it looks like a boy tapping his chest twice across a parking lot. Mostly, it looks like a folder with your name on it and the certainty that you are allowed to keep it. If you're standing at your own kitchen counter tonight with a phone face down and a letter from the DMV that doesn't match your life, hear me. You don't have to be furniture. You can be a person. You can call a Maya. You can gather ink and paper and witnesses and dates. You can choose a sentence that saves you. I belong to myself. You can tape it to the inside of your cabinet where you keep the good glasses and read it every morning until it stops sounding rebellious and starts sounding like home. This is the part where people ask how I am. I say I'm good. And for once, the arithmetic checks. I wake up, I bake, I sell slices of a thing made of flour, butter, sugar, eggs, and the unglamorous miracle of following directions. I lock my door with a click that belongs to me. I look out at my maple and watch it fling green like a flag. I lay down on a bed I bought with pie money and close my eyes without bargaining with ghosts. When I want to feel young, I drive past the Little League field and watch kids decide who they are without knowing that's what they're doing. When I want to feel old in the good way, I go to the library and listen to someone read their first paragraph out loud. When I want to feel exactly my age, I sit on my porch and let the evening decide the music. Someone asked me recently if I forgave Jason and Brooke. I said I did not know that forgiveness is a switch as much as it is a dimmer. The light turns slowly as if the sun is considering the day. It brightens because I keep my distance and because I want something better for myself than constant remembering. If they ever come to my trailer, I will hand him a slice of lemon chess and say, "Cold butter, buddy, that's the trick." Boundaries are just the lines on a road. They let us drive without turning into each other. People think the best revenge is living well. I don't know about revenge, but I do know about living. It's a pot of coffee at sunrise that keeps getting refilled even when you swear you're done. It's lemon chess that cracks less if you respect the bake. It's the soft relief of a judge saying, "Boundary recognized." It's a folder in a drawer and your name on your own tongue, like a flavor you decided to keep. My name is Eleanor Hart. I own my life, my keys, my pies, and my peace. If you needed to hear someone your mother's age say it out loud, here it is. Get a folder. Keep your butter cold, and do not mistake control for care. When you learn that lesson, the door you thought was locked will open, and on the other side is a porch with a chair that creaks because someone sits in it and belongs.